Before moving to England at 25, my partner and I decided it made more sense for me to stay home for a while and save as much money as I could. It was a pretty difficult period for us, and while I was staying at my dad's house, things started happening in my bedroom that genuinely unsettled me. At first, it was small things. Would hear what sounded like footsteps moving around my bed. Things would randomly fall inside the closet. My TV would suddenly switch to static for no obvious reason. The strange part was that this was my dad's house, the same house my parents had lived in after their divorce. It had been built in 2016, and the TV itself was one I had bought when I first moved out in 2014. There wasn't an obvious reason for any of it. Eventually, I became uncomfortable enough to tell my best friend, someone I had known since childhood. Instead of laughing it off, she reminded me that strange things had happened to me when I was younger too. Some of those memories were things I had almost completely forgotten, including waking up with scratches and, when I was 6, having the television fall on top of me. For anyone who remembers how heavy old televisions were, this thing was probably around 80 pounds, and I obviously couldn't move it by myself. Hearing all of that again made me much more uneasy than I wanted to admit. Then one night, I woke up because I needed to use the bathroom. I woke up immediately feeling completely alert, which was unusual for me. For some reason, I couldn't bring myself to move. I was lying there frozen with fear, even though part of me kept insisting that I was being ridiculous. Eventually, I convinced myself to just get up. I reached toward the bedside table for my phone, and that's when a hand suddenly grabbed my wrist. A woman covered in what looked like black muck appeared right in front of me. Her face was horrifying, and she screamed directly into my face before rushing toward me. And then, nothing. I woke up again, and there was nobody there. The only thing left was a painful sensation around my wrist. The following day, there was actually a red mark where I had felt the hand. I didn't really know what to make of it, so I tried to move on. My now husband eventually came to stay with me and my dad for a couple of months because our relationship was struggling. And 3 nights after he arrived, something happened to him too. I woke up and noticed him moving around frantically. He was mumbling, fidgeting, and covered in sweat, which was strange because my room was usually around -10 degrees Celsius. He wasn't someone who normally dreamed, either. I gently poked him and told him everything was okay, trying to wake him without frightening him. Instead, he suddenly jolted awake, screaming. What he told me afterward is something he has never wanted to discuss again. He said he had woken up during the night because he needed to use the bathroom. When he reached the bedroom door, he noticed it shaking violently. Then the entire door seemed to slam itself out of its hinges. He went toward it, assuming my dad might have been outside, and just as he was about to open it, the door flew open. Standing there was the same woman in black. She screamed directly into his face, and then he woke up. The next day, I went out and bought some sage. I smudged the house several times before my dad returned from work. At that point, I convinced myself that whatever had been happening was finally over. I believed it had been something paranormal because I couldn't find another explanation, especially since I had never told my partner about my own dream or any of the strange things happening in the room. Then, in the summer of 2025, we visited again. We stayed at my dad's for 7 nights, and on one of those nights, I woke up suddenly feeling completely alert. I initially blamed it on having gone out with some old friends from my hometown the night before, so I laughed quietly to myself and started scrolling through Instagram. Eventually, I put my phone down and tried to sleep again. That's when I heard something from the closet. I looked over. The room had blackout curtains by then, so it was almost completely dark. There was only the bed, a small TV mounted on the wall, a dresser inside the closet, and some board games sitting on top. The only light in the entire room came from the little standby light on the TV. Then something slowly stepped into that tiny glow, almost as if someone had walked forward from the darkness. I just stared at it. I remember feeling completely confused because I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I even moved my arms around the bed, trying to make sure I wasn't somehow looking at the blanket or my husband's legs. Whatever it was didn't move. We seemed to stare at each other for what felt like 3 minutes, although I have no idea how long it actually lasted. Eventually, it slowly stepped backward and disappeared from the light. Nothing else happened. There was no attack or dramatic ending. It simply felt like a message, "I am still here." After that, I stopped trying to convince myself that there was nothing unusual about that house. I believe in the paranormal now, and honestly, I have no desire to find out what else might be there. Aside from the experiences I had personally, one of the biggest reasons I started believing in the supernatural was because of the things my dad experienced. The strange part is that my dad is an atheist, and even after everything that has happened to him, he still manages to remain skeptical. One of the first stories happened when he was in journalism school. He and some of his classmates were assigned to make a report about something, and they decided to investigate a cemetery. While they were there, they interviewed the cemetery keeper, who told them about several strange things he claimed to have witnessed, including seeing what he believed was the ghost of a child. My dad wasn't particularly impressed by any of this. He was skeptical and treated it like a normal assignment. During the visit, however, the cemetery keeper showed them an open grave. In Mexico, depending on the cemetery and whether a family has purchased a permanent grave, remains can eventually be removed after several years or even decades and transferred to a communal grave. This particular grave hadn't been covered yet. My dad later said that something about being there started to feel different. Maybe it was because he didn't feel like they were treating the place with enough respect. Or maybe it was simply the atmosphere, but he and the others began experiencing what he described as a strange energy around them. Eventually, they left. But whatever feeling had settled over them didn't disappear when they reached the car. They got inside and started driving, and almost immediately the car began behaving strangely. The lights started flickering. The engine would suddenly stop. The vehicle seemed to malfunction without any obvious reason. At one point, police officers stopped them several times, apparently because something about the car or their driving seemed wrong. My dad said the car simply wasn't responding the way it should. None of it made sense, and it continued until they finally got far enough away from the cemetery. Once they were out of the area, the strange problems stopped. Maybe there was an ordinary explanation for the car trouble, but according to my dad, the timing was difficult to ignore. Another incident happened when my dad and his brother were driving at night. They were suddenly placed in a situation where they were very close to being involved in what could have been a fatal crash. According to my dad, they probably should have died. But just before everything went wrong, the car suddenly stopped. During that moment, my dad swore he saw his deceased brothers sitting in the back seat, watching them. It was his dead uncle, the same person who had been in the car with him before his death. Then, just as suddenly as the car had stopped, it began working again. My dad has always been difficult to convince when it comes to supernatural explanations, but he has never forgotten what he saw that night. The strangest story, though, happened while he was working overnight at an audio studio used for television post-production. It was sometime between 1 and 3 in the morning. My dad wasn't afraid of supernatural things, despite everything that had already happened to him, so he and one of his co-workers were simply working inside the audio cabin. There were several of these cabins lined up because the television channel was quite large. While they worked, his co-worker mentioned that another audio technician who had worked there had recently died. My dad didn't really know the man. He had seen him only a couple of times and didn't remember his name or what he looked like. Not long after his co-worker mentioned the death, my dad happened to look toward one of the other cabins. He saw someone sitting inside, wearing headphones. At first, there was nothing especially strange about it. It looked like another technician working late. Then his coworker looked in the same direction. He immediately told my dad that the person sitting there was the technician who had died. They didn't stick around to investigate. They got out of there as quickly as they could. What makes all of this even stranger is that my dad somehow remains skeptical. He's experienced things he can't explain, but he still doesn't seem willing to completely accept a supernatural explanation.